I've been teaching for around a decade now. I've taught in the Middle East, I've taught in Eastern Europe, I've taught in the States, I've guest lectured in Bangladesh, so very different world spaces. But I always start my emails or classes by telling students that I'm really excited to be here, to be learning with you and from you.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever left a teaching space where I've taught more than I've learned. Hi, I'm Aya Mouallem. I'm a member of the 2020 cohort and a PhD candidate in electrical engineering, minoring in education. I imagine a world where STEM education is not only accessible and equitable, but also inclusive to learners of all backgrounds and abilities.
Welcome to the Imagine a World podcast from Knight-Hennessy Scholars. We are here to give you a glimpse into the Knight-Hennessy Scholar community of graduate students spanning all 7 Stanford schools, including business, education, engineering, humanities, law, medicine, and sustainability. In each episode, we talk with scholars about the world they imagine and what they are doing to bring it to life.
Today you'll be hearing from Aya Mouallem, a 4th-year PhD student in electrical engineering with a minor in education. During our conversation, you'll hear Aya's beginnings in Beirut, her passion and tenacity for accessibility and inclusion within education, experiencing Knight-Hennessy as a world within a home, and vice versa, and so much more. Welcome to another episode of the Imagine a World podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Willie Thompson, at the business school, and will be at the ed school next year, member of the 2022 cohort. And as always, I am joined by my phenomenal co-host, Taylor Goss.
Hey, Willie. I'm back as well, as usual. I appreciated your multi-syllable
Thank you.
episode.
Yeah, I've been trying new verbal dynamics, verbal gymnastics.
Gymnastics. Okay, great. I don't have any verbal gymnastics, but I'm still in the music, science, and technology master's program and master of public policy program. I'm not trying to change. Nothing new for me.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, I know you're not used to doing verbal gymnastics, but I'm pretty sure
Peter Piper picked a pickle pepper.
I mean, she sold seashells by the seashore.
Okay, that's over now.
Okay, all right. Anyway, although we're talking about verbal gymnastics, I could probably do physical gymnastics. So I want to do backflips and exuberance and exhilaration.
Exuberance and exhilaration.
Today on the pod. Aya, how's it going?
Hello. You know, we have a verbal gymnastics phrase in Lebanese.
Ooh. Oh.
Do you want to learn it?
Yes.
Okay.
Jinx.
But it features so many sounds. I don't know if we pronounce these sounds in English, but we can try.
Okay.
It says, خيط حديد على حيط خليل. Do you want to give it a shot?
Oh, wow.
I would like to give it a shot, and I reserve the right to cut this out of the podcast. Would you say it again?
All right. خيط حديد على حيط خليل.
خيط
Yep.
حديد
Yep.
خيط
Ah.
حديد.
There you go. 75%. We'll take it.
75%.
And for non-Lebanese.
Duolingo, 75%. I've got a long road ahead, I know.
Oh, I hear you. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for hosting.
We're happy to be here.
We're happy to have you on. Yeah, it's our pleasure. And I would not be trying Taylor. Taylor's our delegate, the delegate from the co-host on that Lebanese tongue twister. But I know we have a lot to talk about, just given that Imagine a World statement you referenced, and just a life that is full of richness. I want to take a pause really quick before we get into those details and just see, how are you today? How's the day landing on you? It's a Monday, the beginning of another week here in the spring quarter. What's going on for you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I worked out at 6 a.m. This is my New Year's resolution. Let's see if it works. I'm on month 4, so that's good. But other than that, I'm just really happy to be here. I love the rain, so I'm not very happy about the spring weather, but what can we do? But I know that both of you guys like this weather versus mine, so it's fine. I'll take it.
We're a bit more used to the humidity, I think.
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like I said before, we're gonna cover a lot of ground, I believe, here, just about your life, which is fantastic, phenomenal, and quite inspiring, if I must say so myself. And you're welcome. before we talk about the world you imagine and what you hope to envision in the future, let's talk about the world you're born into and the world you've experienced thus far. Where are you from? And what was your journey here to sunny but not rainy Palo Alto?
Oh, wow. Yes, thank you. I was born and raised in Beirut, Lebanon, which is my favorite city in the world. I think growing up, I grew up with my sister and both of my parents. They both worked in the public sector. My mom was a teacher, and so were my uncles and aunts. So I grew up in a very education-centric environment. But my parents had never influenced any of my interests or hobbies or what I spent most of my time on. But I will say that I think the common theme throughout different phases of my life up until coming to Stanford were always experiential learning periods. I can maybe narrow them down into like 4 categories. I've had so much experiential learning in Beirut, in community, at school, and then in teaching. Beirut per se is... Have you guys been to Beirut before?
Not yet.
Not yet, exactly.
Yet.
I like that movie.
Yeah.
Beirut, I think, is one of the most extravagant cities in the world in terms of so much culture, so much belonging, but also so much war, so much instability, so much food, so much love. It's a very special place to me. And I think growing up there completely shaped who I am today and whom I will be wherever I end up in the world. So that's also who I am right here in Palo Alto. I remember I spent my last year of undergrad going and like back and forth between classes and protests. And then I left that and straight came here. So I think just growing up in a space like Beirut, I got to go through a lot of experiences that I wouldn't have had if I had a more shielded life, if we can say so. Maybe like transitioning from that to school, I grew up in a traditional like Lebanese schooling system. It is a relic of French colonialism, so it's very focused on memorization and going through very systematic thinking processes. The only time I'd say I had experiential learning was when my high school teacher, who recently passed away, her name was Miss Elena. She voluntold me into a math fair project, and that project had to do with coding. So I had to build some code with a team, and we had to go to that math fair. We ended up designing code. I learned from scratch. We designed code to build spiral staircases were like usable by different people and like people of different abilities and ages. But that was my first experience with going into this like learning space with something I didn't know, which was coding, and then being fascinated with how digital code and software can solve things in real life.
Yeah.
So that pushed me into engineering. And today I'm an engineer. I experiment, I tinker, I break things, and that's my identity. And that also kind of like falls in line with All Girls Code, which is this nonprofit that I founded. I was one of 2 girls in a software engineering lab of more than 20 students during my first year of undergrad.
Yeah.
And I came again from a family where I was never influenced in terms of what I can and can't do, but that wasn't the case for so many other women in the field. So we started All Girls Code as this like experiment, just wanting to see what the space out there is like for young girls, whether they even get exposure to science, technology, engineering, and math or STEM before university. And apparently they did not. And so that's how we started this initiative. And now it grew into a movement that's bigger than any of us. And it's across the Middle East. That had so much experiential learning because I was learning from other people's experiences on the ground with people. And then the last area is probably teaching. So I've been teaching for around a decade now. I've taught in the Middle East. I've taught in Eastern Europe. I've taught in the States. I've guest lectured in Bangladesh. So very different like world spaces. But I always start my emails or classes by telling students that I'm really excited to be here, to be learning with you and from you. And I don't think I've ever left a teaching space where I've taught more than I've learned. So I think that's where the core of my experiential learning kind of comes from. But that's kind of an overview of how much experiential learning has shaped me to where I am today.
Wow. Thank you for giving us this map
Through
which to navigate your experiences. I like how you kind of categorize each one. I think that I'm seeing a common link amongst all of them, which is, something I'm not surprised about. Seeing you very often around Denning House and knowing you as a person, you're very passionate. And connected to that passion is commitment to introducing yourself to unfamiliar experiences. That seems, I heard that again and again as a theme, what you were just talking about. maybe a good place to start would be talking about the beginnings of All Girls Code. Was it an unfamiliar experience for you to decide to found your own organization? What was the beginnings of that like? What was hard about it? What did you learn from it? And how do you think that propelled you in this direction toward where you are now?
Yeah, totally, Taylor. I think when we started All Girls Code, we were a bunch of, we were two 18-year-olds, me and my co-founder Maya.
Yeah.
And
Aya and Maya.
Aya and Maya.
One and I are always on for the alliteration.
100%. Poetic.
Oh, yeah. We were 18-year-olds. We were both going into computer engineering. We had met in high school before, and we were both alarmed by this percentage in terms of representation of different genders in engineering.
So 25%, right? In engineering, we're STEM, we're women, right?
Even less in so many countries, which is actually very alarming. Right. But what was very concerning was, for both of us, we were just perplexed by why that's the case. And we're in Lebanon, and Lebanon is an anomaly in the Middle East in terms of we don't necessarily follow expected stereotypical or sociocultural trends in the region. Like Lebanon's considered to be a progressive country. Relatively, it's considered to be a country where there's so much emphasis on STEM, even though the emphasis comes from families and parents and not necessarily from government, because again, there's a lack of support from government on all fronts. But when we started the camp, or we called it a camp the first summer, we did reach out to a few entities at our undergrad university / in the community, and we were always shut down. We were just reaching out for mentorship, tell us how you got to where you are, or tell us, give us advice on what we can do to get started with outreach, with, creating content. It was a big deal for us to create localized content to make sure that these girls aren't being thrown, with some random content online. We just wanted to create something localized to Lebanon, very relevant. And we were always receiving the same response of, you're just two 18-year-olds. You need some time to be toughened up before you can found or start something. And that was the first time in my life I had done anything beyond the traditional. I grew up in this educational system in Lebanon. It's very rigid. I had that one experience with the high school fair where that literally transformed my life in terms of going into engineering. But beyond that, I had never been shut down. I had never been told that I'm not good enough or too young. So all of that kind of created the sense of, I wouldn't say anger, but it would just reinforce this passion that I had for this is an area where there's a problem and I think we can do something about it. And so that's how we kind of got started. We ended up, I remember we used to meet at this local coffee shop and just send out hundreds of emails, go to offices and talk to people at the universities until we were able to get some people at our university on board in terms of just offering us space and a computer lab so we can run things. And then beyond that, I think it was a lot of experiential learning again and kind of learning by doing. So we had no clue how to start something grassroots. We had no budget. All the volunteers were our friends. Yeah. We were creating educational content. Now looking back, I'm shocked by how that kind of came together and ran. But I do think that what keeps us going is we had 100 girls show up that first summer. That was crazy.
Wow. How many were you expecting?
20, 30, I'd say. Yeah. And we were up to the challenge. And then at the end, these girls would, before they'd leave, they'd say, you've changed my life. Or they'd reach out again and be like, I'm now studying engineering. And I think those statements are what keeps us going in terms of, it's a very rigid system. Everything is very traditional. But as long as we're changing one person's life or perspective, that's enough to just fuel our passion, I'd say.
Yeah. Do you think that helped with buy-in from third-party entities that would contribute?
Yeah, totally. I think after that first summer, we ended up running a lot more initiatives. And again, we were young, so we had a lot of energy to spend on this effort. Mm-hmm. We ended up grabbing the attention of the Lebanese prime minister.
Yeah, they were honored by the
exactly.
With an award.
We ended up getting featured by international entities. We ended up getting fellowships have more training on advocacy. And I think the beads kind of scrolled through after that. But again, I think those stories are the ones that we don't hear enough in terms of when you're starting something so grassroots, it takes a lot before you can get off the ground and someone notices you and then things become more sustainable and clearer and easier to run. Yeah. Right. And we've been running for 6 years since. So that's been a long journey.
and now you're an advisory member to All Girls Code.
Yes.
And so Taylor mentioned the passion. I think something that comes through for me hearing you tell the story, which has been documented in so many different ways, even in written form on the Knight-Hennessy website. Definitely check that out. It's a lot of really rich detail there. Is also a sense of like tenacity, I think. And you've landed on this idea of the benefits of experiential learning as opposed to, I guess, rote learning. I don't know what the opposite of experiential learning, what we do in the U.S. is, but it's not experiential. The majority is not experiential, right? At least when I was coming up. And something that I've learned in one of my classes at the GSB, Touchy-Feely, which is OB374, Interpersonal Dynamics. But
super famous.
Yeah, is that class is also an experiential learning experience, and something that I've experienced in that class, and I'm wondering if you've experienced the same, is that experiential learning is inefficient by design. That's something we've talked a lot about in the class, is that there is no sort of clean and clear way to do it. And so I'm wondering, how do you square the reality of experiential learning being inefficient, and what do you get from that as opposed to some of the things we're exposed to maybe at Stanford and grad school about that are centered on the need to be efficient, to sort of like in your thinking and in your learning? Like how do you square that circle?
I love this reflection. Thank you, Willie. I think I had noticed that earlier on, and I was never eloquent enough to phrase it the way you did. But I do think what I noticed was growing up in that system in Lebanon that rewarded, high grades, cutthroat competition in terms of, again, high grades. I admired experiential learning for it being that rugged and like extremely experimental. Yeah. You were uncertain about the outcome. You were uncertain whether this was worth your time, but you still ended up learning something, whether you failed or succeeded. Right. I think what ended up grabbing my attention the most since and up until today is focusing more on, given that these systems that already exist kind of exclude experiential learning, how can we address the conscious exclusion of people from these experiences? And I think to reflect on that, one question that I asked during an all-girls code graduation ceremony was asking young girls how many of them had been called at home to like help change a light bulb. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think we had maybe 200 attendees, mm-hmm. and then maybe 2 girls raised their hands. And I think when I think of this, I think of how, because our lives and like our cultures and these educational systems are set up in a way to never prioritize experiential learning, regardless of whether it's an efficient or non-efficient form mm-hmm. of learning and teaching. Right. We end up at the same time from the start kind of completely obliterating this chance of these very diverse groups of people getting the opportunity to explore this space for starters, and then check if it's an efficient form of learning for them or not.
Right, right.
And then again, that also transitioned into the work I do now, where I work with groups of people with disabilities. And as someone who grew up and like completely adores STEM, it's crazy to me that we're privileged enough to take so much for granted in STEM. I can go to a lab, I can solder, I can set things on fire, like things go wild. That's completely fine. But then what about a blind learner who's interested in making something at the lab?
Right, yeah, right.
And I think now my frustration and my passion is focused on that area of, as people in education, and I come from an engineering background and I can elaborate on this shift more, but I'm just extremely shocked by how much exclusion there is in terms of access, and then in terms of inclusion in these spaces where you're encouraged to like try something out. Let's see if it works. Let's see if it doesn't. Try something out with people. Try something out with tools. So I think that's where I'm now. My mind is like boggled the most, I'd say.
Yeah. It reminds me of Angela Glover Blackwell's writing, who's for the CEO of PolicyLink. And she wrote an article that resonated a lot in a previous job around this idea of a curb cut effect, and how curb cuts apparently came out of UC Berkeley during protests, and which is not surprising. But, they sort of poured cement like over these like curbs to like create these curb cuts. And now people use curb cuts when you move, like when you like, and sort of like when it's designed for people who are the most marginalized, you get spillover effects, right? And so here you talk about like, how do you design something in a way that allows people to make and create things without, like, if you design it for someone who cannot see and who's blind, like imagine the things you unlock for people who never would have thought about that,
exactly.
But for those attributes. So it's really cool to hear that.
Yeah. And this is really getting into the heart of your Imagine a World statement that we heard up top about accessibility and equity in learning throughout STEM. You've touched about it, especially in the sense of access. But when did you start to think more about equity in the space, especially when it's related to disabled persons? And could you go more into your current work you're doing?
100%. And I think you raise a really important point in terms of access is not inclusion.
Yep.
So again, I had said that I'm an engineer at heart and I'll always be an engineer. I came to Stanford wanting to design biochips. That was what I had started getting into during undergrad. And then
what's a biochip, by the way? Just for
biochips. I mean, again, because I came from Lebanon, we didn't have resources there to do all this sci-fi stuff, but biochips are essentially implantables, like chips you can implant into your body, chips that can regulate your bodily functions to improve your health system. Okay. So that space was really fascinating to me. And I think, again, it came from a place of these were limited opportunities in Lebanon. I wanted to do something with engineering that helped people directly. So I came to Stanford wanting to do biochips and electrical engineering. And then I started feeling this decreased sense of fulfillment because working with I admire the work of bioengineers and biochips designers, but you spend so much time, years, working on and iterating on designs of these miniature chips until you get to the point where you deploy them and then you can get to meet humans who might be using them. For me, I needed something that was more direct, where I would be working with people and with communities from the start. And I wanted to co-design with people. So I didn't want to come in as someone who was the expert and knew what to do and knew how to fix things. I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to see what their concerns are and then kind of to bridge those with what's already out there in the world and how we can co-design something that works for everyone. So I came to Stanford, wanted to do biochips, started doing that. And then I came across this experience of a student who's blind and who's in mechanical engineering and who wanted to take this dynamics course or a course that had a lot of visualizations, visual design, graphs, plots, that kind of thing. Yeah. And my advisor, who's incredible, Professor Sherry Shepard, she's the godmother of engineering education, this field. And she brought this up to me and we were just talking about how crazy it is that we have entire fields of engineering that are not accessible to all students. And for me, because engineering had opened up all these spaces of, you can build something that works and helps communities, I kind of got hung up on that experience. And then I looked into it a bit more and then I discovered that in parallel to all the beautiful things that engineering has enabled us to do, there are entire communities of people who have not been able to access these wonderful creations of engineering because of the exclusion of the field, the inherent ableism of the field. And then if you take a step back, there's also more isms that factor in. There's elitism, there's racism, there's colonialism, and how these fields were designed, set up, structured, and maintained. And I think where I'm at right now is building educational tools in line with my Imagine a World statement, educational frameworks, anything that can support teachers in including the most marginalized students in their classrooms and teaching environments. But at the same time, we're also making sure that what we're building goes directly to practice. So we had just built the first accessible electronic simulator, which sounds like a bunch of random words, but it's actually a really important tool because as an introductory engineering student, you need to learn how to design circuits. Taylor, I think you might have taken some electronics here and there.
Yeah, I took, so for the music science and technology degree, I had to take some signal processing classes, specifically audio signal processing classes. And at a fundamental level, the manipulation and analysis of signals is very similar amongst several different fields.
Oh, interesting.
And so I would run into Aya and she'd be like, "Oh, what are you taking?" And I'm like, "I'm taking this class on Fourier transforms in audio signal processing." And she's like, what? Have you done this before?
Okay, yeah, sorry.
It was a 0 to 100 for you because I did not go to school for it, engineering. But Aya, your encouragement certainly helped. But I feel your pain is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're about to get your degree, so you made it. But this is an example of how interdisciplinary and cross-cutting these areas are and these tools are.
Sure, yeah.
And so what does it mean if a student who's really interested in exploring engineering, design, and making can't use these basic tools to build what they imagine. And so that is where the frustration started. So what we're doing now is we're never designing any tool on our own. There are entire communities out there. I work closely with the blind community in the Bay Area, but there are so many other communities that are marginalized in STEM fields. We work together to identify from their experiences what they think needs to be addressed, from our experiences as educators and other stakeholders, what could be addressed. And then we work together to co-design, evaluate, and then deploy free of charge everywhere, open source these tools so anyone can use them. A really wholesome story is I got an email maybe 2 weeks ago from the student in Poland. I've never been to Poland, have nothing to do with the country.
Not yet. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Would love to teach in Poland. But the student reaches out to me and he's like, "Hi, Aya, I'm a blind student. I'm studying engineering and can I use your tool?" And I'm like, that is crazy. There's such lack in addressing accessibility and inclusion in STEM that the student across the world in Poland is reaching out to us, somehow found out about our tool. And this could open up his world to engineering and to more advanced studies in the field. So that's kind of what we've been doing so far. And I think the most interesting part about this work for me is going back or circling back to the ideas you brought up. There's so much tenacity and passion that goes into this. We're going up against a very established system with all the isms that I mentioned. And so we need to be vocal, we need to push, we need to challenge the system, we need to be critical. But then again, when this one email, that you get from Poland tells you that you're doing something right, I think it's all worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because you were articulating that the reason that you started doing more of this work is because you wanted to make an impact on a ground level. So of course, that Polish student emailing you is going to light your fire.
Exactly, 100%.
So we mentioned that you were the co-founder and acting director of All Girls College. We'll come back to that. Yes. And now you sort of transition to an advisory role. Yes. As someone who's at the business school, we talk a lot about managing growing enterprises and sort of making that transition from being the scrappy, sort of doing everything by yourself, to then becoming the manager leader and then successioning the organization effectively. How did you go about that? And what did you learn from that in terms of being able to allow All Girls Code to flourish, not without you, but because of your ability to steward it well?
Oh, I'm going to enjoy reflecting on this one. I think, again, because we had started All Girls Code very young and we were not able to find and convince mentors to help us out, there is a lot of learning that we did along the way. So the first summer, we ended up just having a bunch of volunteers where our friends join, help run things. Things worked out. We decided we wanted to help out more girls, so we had to scale up, recruited more volunteers. The thing that made a difference, and I think it still makes a difference till today, and that's why All Girls Code is still sustainable, is there's still this sense of very strong passion and urge to change the status quo, which we think we have not been able to achieve yet, and that's what keeps us going. Along the years, we ended up, again, because we were starting to expand our outreach, people started hearing about this initiative, joining. It's a weird initiative. We basically have no budget. We have no structured business model, I'd say. We did end up starting this, very organic idea of let's create teams, let's have team leads, let's have volunteers. And then we started noticing this trend of, on average, maybe a quarter of each year's cohort of girls participating in the program would tell us after the program that they've enjoyed it so much, they want to do more and they want to give back. Okay. And for them, they thought giving back would be joining All Girls Code as a team member. So we started noticing this trend of a girl comes in as a participant at probably maybe 16 years old, joins the team as an intern during the summer, maybe at around 17 years old. And then at around 18 years old, once she starts college or higher ed, she'd join as a team member, as a volunteer. She'd stay on, she'd end up going up to team lead, taking on more tasks, and then would even move up to become a director of a group of teams. Right now, almost everyone, I'd say, in leadership in All Girls Code, because my co-founder and I transitioned out when we moved out of the country. Almost all leadership people are girls who went through that process, who started off as participants in All Girls Code years ago and got this chance of exploring what it's like to take on more leadership roles in an environment that's so nurturing and supportive. Again, I think one of the benefits of this being a very grassroots initiative where everyone's just doing it out of passion is there is space to make mistakes. There's space to learn, to like bring in fresh ideas. And when it was time for me to leave Lebanon, so that was around maybe 3 to 4 years after we started All Girls Code, I was not very scared of like stepping down because I knew that people who would take on my responsibilities, my roles would like influence the direction, the vision of All Girls Code had gone through like tenaciously through all aspects of All Girls Code. They experienced it as a participant. They led it as a team member. They brought in new ideas as directors. So it was a very organic transition. And I think that's why today it's also still sustainable because we never perceived it as a business where where we're like emphasizing only like, I mean, we have no profit, but like we never perceived it as the sense of it's a business, we're making money. Like this is like people's job. It's something that people put in their like extra 10% of time into, extra like weekends into. And that's what has kept it so motivated as an initiative to scale change, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a really great reflection. And it reminds me of a conversation that I had recently in one of my classes at the business school, because what I'm hearing you say is that the long-term success of All Girls Code as an organization is a function of y'all's ability to identify latent potential and provide pathways for people to grow and just take those opportunities, right? Whereas if you sort of done it, another way you can do it is say, you would have said, we want people who have a particular type of skills. And we would have said, people with the skills, we'll take you up and we'll train you. But in this case, you were just basing it off of people's natural interest and their willingness to engage. And surprise, surprise, when people are engaged and you give them opportunities to become more engaged, and, you know, they build a pathway for themselves, right?
And I will say, Willie, like, I also do recognize that All Girls Code is a very niche type of initiative because we're functioning specifically at that like turning edge of high schoolers to undergrads. Yeah. It's not the case for any initiative out there, but that has worked out well for us. I fully agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I do have 2 quick questions. I think these are quick. Is there any significance in the necklace that you're wearing?
Oh, yeah.
And okay, great. So I want to hear about that. And then people will see the picture of your imaginal world drawing. I want to know what was inspiring your drawings here.
So. I got you very quickly. I'm wearing a necklace that my friends always say it looks like a lightning bolt, but it's actually Lebanon's map. Mm-hmm. I actually find this so weird. Like, I think maybe because Lebanon is such a small country, we do feel a lot of pride in being Lebanese. Also, maybe because it's a very tough country to grow up in, and we do feel the sense of belonging and wanting to give back wherever we are. I do wear this occasionally when I have big events during the day, like this podcast.
Oh, the podcast is a big event. Wow. All right.
Yeah, so like the podcast is a special event for this necklace to come out. But I really do love wearing it because the longer I've been here now for 4 years, I might stay outside of Lebanon for many years to come. I think there is significance for me in remembering where I come from, people who I can help wherever I am. And now, obviously, this does not only represent Lebanon, it represents a lot of the communities that I work with. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I cherish it a lot. Also, my mom got me this necklace. So shout out to my mom.
That's your mom.
Yeah.
Shout out to Aya's mom.
Exactly. The art on the board. So I came into this podcast and Willie and Taylor asked me to imagine a world how I imagine it. There's imagine a world with some sparkle. That's my most used emoji.
Recently used.
I have a home and an earth because Knight-Hennessy has impacted the way I see the world. There's this very famous statement that I got to say last year at Knight-Hennessy graduation. Knight-Hennessy is a home in the world and the world in a home. So there are arrows connecting these two earth and home drawings. And then I have a bunch of random symbols. There's a screw from like a lab. There's like women, Braille, Arabic, love, and then a microphone for protests. So it's a lot of like, it's symbolizing a lot of, again, the experiential learning I've gotten to have growing up. And I hope that the world I'm imagining for the future will end up accumulating much more symbols with many new learning experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. You just mentioned that you have the megaphone you're drawing, and you earlier briefly mentioned about, being part of protests back home. And I guess this is a little bit of a two-parter, but could you talk about the origin of your political activism and the types of political activism in which you've engaged and what's motivated that? And especially given your activity in your home, not being in Lebanon, could you talk about what it means for you to be away from home, what you miss about it, and especially what it means to be politically active in Lebanon and be away from there?
Yeah, of course. I grew up in a very apolitical household. I think as a very quick crash course, Lebanon went through like 15 years of a catastrophic civil war, and that ended in the 1990s. So it's relatively still fresh out of that phase.
Yeah.
That also affected people's day-to-day living. We do have a lot of sectarianism in Lebanon because that civil war was sect and religion driven. And so my parents made the decision that my sister and I would grow up in an apolitical household where we have a lot of love for Lebanon, a lot of love for anyone and everyone who lives in this country, but no love for any political party.
Okay.
It's actually crazy when you think about it. Almost all political parties in Lebanon today are led by warlords, like people who led militias and factions in the war. And so I thank my parents every day for them making this decision. And this decision came at a cost. Like in Lebanon, if you're affiliated with a political party, you get job referrals, you get access to services in government easier than other people. But again, that was not our case. And I'm really grateful for that, because that meant I got to grow up free. So I got to grow up independent, free. I would think and I would criticize and I would do whatever I want. But I was never involved in any political activism until the revolution in 2019. And that started because we discovered that we had a director of the central bank in Lebanon who had effectively set up some sort of a Ponzi scheme. And so all the money, all the hard-earned money of a lot of people in Lebanon was stuck in the banks, and we still can't access this money to this day. And so today, more than 70%, if I'm not mistaken, of Lebanese people had fallen under the poverty line in a matter of 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So that is catastrophic if you think about it. And that was shocking when it happened. And it made sense that people went to the streets. And my mother, in particular, that was the first time I saw her feel like, yeah, this is the time when we need to get political. There's something happening. We need to stand up for our rights. And that was the first time we had ever engaged in anything political. And we went to the streets and we protested many, many times for a year. The last protest I went to before I left Lebanon was a protest against the dollarization of university fees. Lebanon, again, because of the way it's set up, there's an oligarchy that runs the country. There's only one public university in all of Lebanon. And then there's like more than 20 private universities. And what had been happening then was the political people and political power wanted to dollarize all university fees. And the Lebanese pound had lost its value against the dollar. So that meant that many people would not have access to education. And education had been for so long the primary driver for upward social mobility in Lebanon. So that meant many people would get stuck out of the educational system. So that was the last protest I went to. And I think that's very symbolic in terms of what I still work for. So I moved out. I'm still very politically engaged, though I can't protest for educational systems in Lebanon here. Yeah. But I did write a lot of opinion pieces. I did write a piece about encouraging people to go out and vote these people out of the system. I started this fellowship that we're running here. Like, we're a bunch of people in technology in the States. We're all Lebanese. And we started this first fellowship in Lebanon to help students complement their higher education with the hidden curriculum, which is, again, like educational experiences that you wouldn't have access to if you don't belong to a political party. Right. So how do you get an internship? How do you network? What opportunities are out there for you? How can you go study abroad? This kind of thing that we take for granted day to day, but many people do not have access to. So I do think I'm very connected to Lebanon still now that I'm abroad. I make great Lebanese food, which
Okay, that sounds like an offer.
Yeah,
that sounds like an offer.
I'm going to take it that way.
Take me up on it anytime. That is stuff I learned here. Like, I never learned how to cook very strong Lebanese food when I was home. So I think being awakened a lot of sentiment in me for the country. But it also gave me a much clearer outlook on where the country's going, what I can do as an individual to contribute, and then what I can do with all, again, this tenacity and passion. And again, for me, it was always very clear that education is the space that I can impact the most. And that's what I've been focused on since.
Fantastic. So you mentioned Lebanese food and how good you are making it. Taylor's from Louisiana. A food that is known to Louisiana is gumbo. I'm from Georgia, Alabama. I don't know. I guess soul food's also just like a thing. I don't know if there's like a particular thing. What's a go-to Lebanese dish? What is the bam? That's Lebanese food.
Oof, what a question. I think if you're being introduced to Lebanese cuisine, your go-to is going to be tabbouleh, the Lebanese salad. Have you had tabbouleh before? The one with parsley, tomatoes, lemon.
No,
I don't think I've had.
I'm sure I don't think I've had that.
That's
a combination. No.
That's going to be the salad when you take me up on the dinner I'm cooking.
Okay.
And then I think the homey food that I really miss is mohrabiyeh, which is made of these. It's very similar to couscous. But I think it just reminds me of my mom a lot. I think my mom makes it better than anyone in the world. This one is not served at restaurants though, so you will definitely need to eat it at my place.
Okay.
But tabbouleh you can find anywhere in so many variations too nowadays.
Okay, something for us to look forward to.
There you go.
Yeah. Sorry if you're listening, you don't have the pleasure of access to Aya's food.
Unless you become a Knight-Hennessy Scholar.
There you go.
It's that simple.
Something you mentioned just a second ago was the fact that you've written a lot of opinion pieces about home and I believe about your work as well, correct?
Yep.
Something I noticed about you in some of our research was that, I believe, at least to my knowledge, you're one of the select group of Knight-Hennessy Scholars that have a dedicated Wikipedia page.
Oh, no.
You do have a Wikipedia page, and you have a significant online presence and platform. You were featured in a really lovely article that the New York Times posted. And there are several pieces about your work with All Girls Code.
Verbal gymnastics,
exactly. How do you feel about having that visibility, having that platform? Does it appear in your life very often? And how does it influence the way that you present yourself to the world?
I actually have a really wholesome story about how this Wikipedia page came to be.
Okay.
I think last year, maybe, there's a group of 3 or 4 undergraduates at my alma mater in Lebanon, the American University of Beirut.
Okay.
And they emailed me out of nowhere and they said, hi, we're 3 undergraduates taking this digital humanities course. Yeah. And our professor is working on contributing to Wikipedia by creating more pages about Arab women who have impacted our communities. And can we write something about you? And I said, sure, I'm happy to help however you want me to. So we just had one call. They just asked me very general questions. They never emailed me again, but then one of my friends here, like one of my best friends here at Knight-Hennessy actually brought this up at like a random high stakes dinner and was like, yeah, Aya has a Wikipedia page. And I'm like, no, I don't.
A random high stakes dinner.
Yeah, so that exists. But Taylor, I do love your question in terms of like what implications does online presence have? And this is a conversation we've been having here in Knight-Hennessy as well. I think when this online presence started, it started because we were very clear on wanting to expand the outreach of All Girls Code.
Yes.
And if that had to do with us being interviewed or us writing pieces, then so be it. So that was us doing things for All Girls Code to grow. And then beyond that, as I started having this platform where I got to say more things and I got to define what I could comment on, areas that I was interested in writing about. I was faced with the decision to either just reject and like maintain a more of like a low-key profile or take up these opportunities and define what I believed was important to amplify. And I ended up going with this latter option. I don't regret it at all. And I'm very privileged and fortunate to have these opportunities where I get to write and I get to criticize and I get to support initiatives and amplify voices that otherwise wouldn't find their way to being heard among larger groups and communities. But at the same time, I would definitely say this comes with a responsibility. I still get a lot of emails from former students whom I've taught in different spaces around the world and from All Girls Code alumni. And that always reminds me that as long as I am in this position where people remember what I said or something that I've done that have influenced them, that also comes with, I should be very careful and clear on my motivations and my goals and why I do what I do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really respect the level of thought that you put into your stewardship of your online presence and your image, I guess you would say. But what I really mean is that thoughtfulness makes sense to me knowing you because, we've gotten to know each other through the Knight-Hennessy community. Yes. And I really do think that you're a person who is consistently curious about other people's lives and how they're doing in the sense of, we see each other. You are very vocally, how are you doing? And I feel...
And you too.
And yeah, we all try, but there's something about you that we're talking about your passion, about your tenacity, that I think you bring into your personal life as well, not just with your career and what you want to see for your vision of the world, but how the people in your community play into that. Like, I think you're very perceptive and kind and thoughtful about the way that you move through our Knight-Hennessy community.
Thank you, Taylor.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And actually that leads to another question, which is you come to America for your graduate degree at Knight-Hennessy and you arrive at Stanford. How has Stanford and the Knight-Hennessy community been a part of your experience in graduate school? And would you talk about this community and maybe other things you're up to outside of work?
Yes. Wow. I think the best decision I ever made was coming to Stanford and joining Knight-Hennessy. I think graduate school at Stanford on its own is just surreal. You have access to abundant resources, experts in any field that you can think of. But I think Knight-Hennessy in particular complemented and rounded up that experience in some transformational way that I probably could not have gotten anywhere else in the world. First of all, it's definitely access to community. Taylor, like you, like so many of our friends, I think I want to try to describe how important these people are to me. They're like more than colleagues, they're definitely family, and they're definitely family for life. But these people had been there for me, celebrating and grieving, 3 a.m. breakfasts, last minute trips, random concerts, thesis, research together. It's just a very interconnected community in terms of interests, passions, just, reflecting, having fun, just being there for each other and being in community is something that I have not experienced that much outside of Knight-Hennessy, where I am part of many communities. I'm just not actively and aware of me being in community with these people. Knight-Hennessy in terms of programming is just incredible, and especially with the team that does an exceptional job at all the programming that we get access to. And I know you're smiling at that, but I don't think I never imagined having access and participating in so many events on climate change and indigenous rights and healthcare system reform, areas that I don't really have any expertise in, but I still felt strongly about contributing to or learning more about. And the team is also just very accessible. It's crazy. I remember last year I had a career existential crisis and I told Tina, the director of Knight-Hennessy, about it. And the very next day we just had like more than an hour-long conversation just figuring things out. And I think that also shows how supportive and how nurturing the team is of this community coming together and flourishing. One area that I got into with Knight-Hennessy, completely separate from my work or anything that I do, is art. I grew up in Lebanon and we have a small, I'd say, budding art scene in Lebanon, but nothing on the scale of, the ballet, the opera, Broadway, immersive pop-up exhibits, shows that Taylor has played. And this is stuff that I got involved in here. I signed up for the Knight-Hennessy Art Committee. And then after that, I joined the Denning Art Committee, where I got to be part of this process of acquiring new art for Knight-Hennessy, for Denning House. And I got to help organize Art Night, led by Jocelyn, who's like the art superstar on the team.
Shout out to Jocelyn.
Yes, we love you. But this art as a space was something I never imagined spending so much time. And just like, I truly enjoy it. And I got to do that because of Knight-Hennessy. And I would really encourage you, if you join Knight-Hennessy, to join the art committee. Beyond that, I really love my life here at Stanford. I work out a lot. I'm outdoors a lot. There are so many initiatives to get involved with, volunteering. I have found family here. So there's this concept of biological family, and I love my biological family back home, and this concept of found family. And these are also my family for life. And these are people I just love and I got to meet through Knight-Hennessy, through Stanford. So yeah, I think I am very fortunate to have a very busy life doing things that I find fulfilling and things that are just really fun to do.
Yeah, that's so lovely. We have a similar experience, especially regarding art and community in Knight-Hennessy. Like, something you touched upon was the fact that Knight-Hennessy has so many people in different fields and from different backgrounds. Especially with, academic fields, it can really break open what could be otherwise a more siloed graduate experience.
100%.
But in terms of, community and cultural backgrounds and differences there, we actually had a little experience in San Francisco. I was going to a concert by this Palestinian Chilean artist named Ileana.
Yes.
And I was there, because I knew Ileana's guitar player.
Yep.
Shout out to Yunus.
Yes,
and I was attending the show by myself, and I was very excited about this. But I saw you and some of our mutual friends walking down the street, and I lit up, and I thought, oh, well, great. Now I have a curator, like you are the superstar curator of Denning House Art Night.
Yes.
You also helped to curate this Middle Eastern pop experience for me, who was less familiar with the music, and it was so much more joyful to get to experience that with you and our mutual friends than it would have been by myself. So it's, I thank Knight-Hennessy for bringing you into my life and for moments like that, because we get to kind of celebrate art in that way.
I mean, Taylor, just to let you know, we were beyond the clouds to know that you were there, because for us, you're the music expert, and we're like, oh, like this is about to be real. But no, I thank you so much for reflecting on that. That actually has been one of my favorite art moments in Knight-Hennessy, getting to see you there in that line too. Yeah, with our friends. Yeah.
So as we were finishing up today with this conversation, we like to ask a couple of questions at the end of the podcast surrounding Knight-Hennessy. And specifically, I would like to know how writing improbable facts were for you. Everyone who fills out a Knight-Hennessy application has to provide 8 improbable facts, things that people would be surprised to learn about you. And for me, it was probably one of the aspects that took the most time and the most consternation to actually make the choice of what those were going to be. So what was that experience like for you? And would you mind sharing 1 or 2?
Yeah, for sure. I think that was the first prompt in the application there are so many prompts in the application that caught me off guard. But that prompt, I think for both of us.
It's a creative application.
That prompt was definitely really off guard for me. What I remember doing is I was working on the application at home, and I just walked around the house and asked my parents and my sister, what do you find weird about me?
Yeah.
And they were not helpful with that. I do think that in particular did push me out of my comfort zone in terms of, you're working on a scholarship application. Are you trying to hit a checklist of what the admissions committee is trying to, is seeking in you, right? And I decided that I wanted to go all out. If I was going to write stuff in there, it was going to be the quirkiest, most random, weirdest things about me. And if this community will take me as I am, that's my plan.
You decided to be vulnerable.
Exactly.
That's great. Yeah.
And I think that's also kind of the tone of the entire application. It's a very introspective application. And I think I would definitely strongly recommend making use of that and taking advantage of the fact that this is a space where you get to be way more vulnerable than what you're writing in your and for me, my PhD application, right? Yeah. I remember one of the improbable facts that I wrote was, I have this rule, maybe this has to do with the experiential learning again, but I have this rule of visiting at least 1 museum in every city that I go to.
Oh, I love this.
And so far I visited more than 50 museums, which is for me a really big number.
Yeah.
But I remember writing that, and I came to Knight-Hennessy, and then one of the scholars had seen this on the portal on my profile, and we ended up having this 1-hour conversation about museums and what our favorite museums are. And I've had wacky experiences at museums. I remember I touched a real moon rock once at a museum.
Wow. From the moon?
From the moons. That was a big deal for me. So yeah, museums, I love them. That was one of my improbable facts.
Do you have a museum in particular that you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, I think it's the small art museum in Lyon in France. It's called the Museum of Fine Arts, or Musée des Beaux-Arts.
Okay.
Beautiful. If you're ever in Lyon for one reason or another, that's your place to go, Taylor.
I haven't been.
There you go. Yet. There's so many yets today. Yeah, I love museums.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And then finally, you actually offered a little bit of your thoughts about the application as a whole, but would you have any closing thoughts for people who are considering applying to Knight-Hennessy?
Definitely apply.
Yes.
I applied with no help, I'd say. I was not actually planning on applying because my timeline the summer before the application deadline had been caught up with GRE and then research internship that I was doing. But one of my friends and mentors who also got his PhD from Stanford had told me, if not now, when? And that made a lot of sense.
Yes.
So, and back then, Knight-Hennessy applications weren't open to first-year PhDs at Stanford. So that was going to be exactly my only chance to apply. So I did apply, and I really genuinely was so vulnerable with my application. Some parts of it, I just reflected open-endedly on ambitions. Some other parts of it, I delved into details about experiences I've had. And it worked out.
Yeah.
And Taylor, I'm assuming for you too.
Well, yes, that's how we've ended up in this room right now.
Exactly. So I would really recommend take the time to apply. And I think it's an investment in terms of how much you end up learning about yourself through the process.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something that can be taken away regardless of what happens is that, if you make the choice to be vulnerable, like you're talking about, I think one really will learn something about themselves by 100%. Filling out this application.
I fully agree.
Aya, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you Willie and I are so grateful for you choosing to spend your time with us today and for sharing your vision. And I'm so excited for everyone to get to hear about the world that you imagine and hear a little bit about your life and wish that they could come to your apartment to get some food.
Thank you so much, Taylor and Willie. And I'm excited to hear your podcasts at some point and you being interviewed. But
all right.
We can have a listening party and I can make dinner.
Perfect. Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Imagine a World, where we hear from inspiring members of the KHS community who are making significant contributions in their respective fields, challenging the status quo, and pushing the boundaries of what is possible as they imagine the world they want to see.
This podcast is sponsored by Knight-Hennessy Scholars at Stanford University, a multidisciplinary, multicultural graduate fellowship program providing scholars with financial support to pursue graduate studies at Stanford while helping equip them to be visionary, courageous, and collaborative leaders who address complex challenges facing the world. Follow us on social media at Knight-Hennessy and visit our website at kh.stanford.edu to learn more about the program and our community.